so much, and thank you to everybody else as well. And so today's lightning talk will be by Dan, who's a co-founder of Boom Wallet. And Dan, looking forward to hearing from you. So over to you. You can go ahead and share your screen.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
So I'll just go ahead and get started. My name is Dan. Um, I am a founder at Boom, and this is kind of my journey from actually being an open source advocate early on to where we are today with Boom and some of the other technologies we're playing with alongside Boom. Excuse me. So, life, liberty, and pursuit of open standards. That's been my tagline for as long as I can remember. It's in my emails as my signature. It's on my GitHub. It's always been a passion of mine. Open standards, open source, privacy, and data portability in particular has always been kind of important to me. I was one of those guys handing out Linux CDs at the early days in front of libraries, trying to get people to try this new, operating system that barely worked. But we definitely were advocating for people taking back control of their own data from early days. Privacy and, like I said, data portability, user owning access to their own data is kind of one of the things that's always been important to me. And I've basically, like many of you, kind of grown up with open source as uh, just part of our everyday lives, right? So it's always been kind of fundamental to my belief system. So fast forward to 2016, in the years between like pushing Linux and in finding Blockstack, I was still doing things like I led a Linux user group in Florida. I ran a Google developer group in Florida also while I was there. So I was still contributing kind of as a community member back to these open source projects. This was back before Google kind of took a little bit more control over Android, before they started just throwing code over the fence back in the early days of Android. So that was always important to me. So come 2016, I find the Blockstack community, and at the time they were trying to build what they were calling a new internet. And that really resonated with me, obviously, as from my days of like, taking control of your own data, um, taking back control of our internet seemed like a great idea. For those of you who don't remember, like in the early days of the internet, it was very kind of pie in the sky ideals. Like everybody's going to have their own servers and everybody's going to publish their own data and everybody will be able to share however they want. And of course, what we've ended up is with these like, social media silos where they're spying on everything you do. So 2016, the idea of kind of taking back control of the internet, creating a new internet that was better, really resonated with me. The community there, when I looked into it, this was early blockchain days, right? Early-ish blockchain days, even before kind of Ethereum NFTs took off. But even then, we had a lot of uh, blockchain people that were not authentic, right? People trying to just kind of create ICOs that took people's money without actually building anything. I found the Blockstack developers were focused more on like heads down development. They weren't shouting about the fact that they were the greatest thing ever or anything like that. And actually at that time they didn't even have like a quote unquote real blockchain. They had a virtual blockchain that they used to control the name data. But they weren't really participating in the blockchain space, but they had a great set of libraries that utilized Bitcoin algorithms, Bitcoin security for securing data. And so this was super interesting to me. I dove in. I loved the ethos of the developers and the team that was running things back in the day. I started running meetups. I started organizing hackathons. Um, we organized hackathons with other blockchains as well, early on, and that was great. It was a great small community, really focused on kind of privacy control, privacy first, um, access to your own data, right? Later, I ended up building NoteWrite, which was just a note-taking tool, but it was like a privacy-respecting note-taking tool, fully open source. You could build it on your own, or you could run it from our servers. But even if you ran it from our servers, we had no way of taking control because of the Blockstack libraries. All your data was encrypted. Only you had access to that, and so that was a great tool that I used to use a lot. Um, so moving on a little bit farther, as Stacks got towards the 2.0 launch, Stacks 2.0 launch, where they launched the blockchain and proof of transfer as a consensus mechanism, we were still working with the kind of non-blockchain applications. So at the time, there were like 400 Blockstack apps, and discovery was a big issue. And so we had started building this app we called Webby, that was really intended for app discovery. And that was fun. I mean, that was interesting, and it was something that was needed by the community. We never quite got to where we were happy with it, but as we approached the Stacks 2.0 launch, we started thinking about the new possibilities and what was possible with the new smart contracts and NFTs, which had already been around a while, right? Obviously, in the wallet functionality, and kind of, not to be cliche, but we kind of evolved into scratching our own itch, right? We kind of evolved Webby into like, let's do an interface experiment with a wallet and see what that looks like using our Webby interface kind of components. And so we started building things out and testing things out. And eventually we kind of, like I said, decided that this was more interesting to us. And we started building Boom as a full-fledged web wallet and NFT platform. Boom was the first NFT platform on Stacks. We launched like a week after the blockchain was launched. We were the first web wallet on Stacks. And we actually have the first NFT that was minted on Stacks. So done by our tool and our team. Yeah. So part of that also later during the evolution of Boom was co-authoring SIP 16, which is the NFT metadata standard currently in place on Stacks. So based on that work, excuse me, y'all feel free to jump in if y'all have questions. So based on that, after that, I was invited to become a Stacks blockchain resident. I did that for a little over a year. That was based on kind of our early work with Boom, and also the fact that we, like you guys, are trying to engage the community. We were talking to people all the time. I was always getting people, like I'm sure you do, asking about how to do this or how do I do that, like in direct messages on Discord or at the time Slack, early on days, different places. So we were always doing those kinds of things in the background. The blockchain resident time kind of formalized some of that. We created the Boombox protocol as part of that time, which was a liquid stacking implementation on top of proof of transfer, on top of the current stacking. But we were using NFTs instead of tokens. So the idea at the time was there would be this marketplace of NFTs where people would trade their liquidity for, trade their stacking returns for potentially, stacks on the spot, so they could get liquidity if they wanted to. The NFTs that we launched were basically tied to a reward address. So at the end of a reward cycle, if you owned one of our NFTs, you would get the rewards from that that cycle. So you could trade them, you could sell them, do whatever you wanted. The marketplace for that never really took off, but that was the idea behind our early Boombox protocol. And a lot of people love the Boombox protocol just because it was also seen as like an additional reward for stacking. So another way to kind of get the community kind of engaged with stacking in those days. Also, we used that to highlight community artists. So every Boombox, every NFT for each cycle, we would work with a different community artist, and they would develop artwork in their own style, and we would use that artwork as part of the Boombox NFTs. And so it kind of hit multiple goals in like I said, kind of engaging the community, kind of giving them another reward for stacking, providing potential liquidity for their stacking, and then also kind of highlighting Stacks community artists, if they weren't well known, or whether they were well known or not, highlighting them and getting them some visibility as well. So and then obviously, as part of the blockchain residency, we also had a lot of developer and community relations things. We had office hours. We talked to the community. We did a lot of meetups and conferences where we would come and talk about Boom and talk about the community. So later, I actually joined the Bitcoin Startup Lab, and it was for taking Boom to the next level. We wanted to kind of learn that startup rigor. Startup Lab was great for that kind of thing early on. They taught us kind of like, you think you have market fit, but do you really have market fit? So like going through the steps to actually prove that you have market fit, excuse me, and what's involved in actually kind of evaluating ideas and being okay to throw them away, right, and come up with new ideas and pivot and work through those ideas. So that was really great. But during that time, before I got through the startup lab, I got picked up by another Bitcoin startup that was focused on providing a more simplified API for developers. It was called Deep Lake, if y'all remember. We were basically providing APIs that enabled simple access to like DLCs, on-chain DLCs via an API. Was really a great implementation. We were chaining DLCs to like provide more complex logic than just like a two outcome kind of DLC. So it was really great. One of the things that you see there, though, is like the firsthand experience with Bitcoin Layer 1 and the trade-offs you have to make for the user interface, right? The user experience limitations. We were the first technology that kind of Liquidium built on. So if you're familiar with Liquidium, the ordinal lending platform, we were their first kind of underlying technology. And so again, working with them, we could see the kind of trade-offs that were necessary, and the difficulties there in working with Layer 1 and Layer 2 as well. Layer 2 was much smoother, obviously, Lightning, but it has a bunch of complexity and trade-offs that don't make it great in the long term. So I did Deep Lake for about a year and left that Bitcoin startup and returned to Boom. When I came out of Deep Lake, Stacks was still pre-Nakamoto, but there was a vision there for SBTC and what for faster blocks could look like. And with that, I was seeing kind of what we could build on top of Stacks with the future of fast blocks and SBTC. And really what we're talking about is a better Lightning than Lightning. A Lightning without the trade-offs, without the overhead liquidity, the locking liquidity into channels like you have to do with Lightning, without the decentralization trade-offs, without the trust trade-offs. So I really kind of dove into building, or enabling, I should say, an ecosystem where we could actually utilize this kind of better Layer 2 for creating a Bitcoin economy, right? The first thing I did was start working on StacksPay. StacksPay is a proposed SIP currently, but it essentially takes like Lightning Bolt type of URLs, or BIP. I'm blanking on the Bitcoin BIP, but I think it's 21 or something like that. But basically encoding transaction information into a URL, so that's easily shareable, and you can share that as a URL, or you can share it as a QR code. So right now, if you're using Lightning, you're usually scanning a QR code, and then you validate, confirm that you want to make a payment, you press pay, and it's done, right? 2 steps, 2 seconds, you're done. And that's kind of the vision that we're unlocking here with StacksPay. It's the same kind of thing. We wrap transaction information. It's a little bit more complicated because we're doing things like smart contract calls, as well as just like a simple token transfers. But the base is there to allow people to like easily share transaction information around potentially like buying an NFT or buying a service, or any kind of transaction that you want to implement. Can be wrapped up in Stacks Pay, and it's encoded obviously to kind of create this like checksum, so that modifying the URLs would result in the Stacks Pay transaction actually not being read properly. So that was the first thing we did. The second thing we did kind of was evolve a wallet, right? So Boom had started off as a web wallet, and primarily focused on simple token transfers, NFT minting, things like that. So we wanted to reevaluate, what does a wallet look like? And one of the things that bothers me is like these kind of, all the wallets look the same. I'm sure you guys have seen hundreds of wallets. They're all balance at the top, send button, receive button, maybe a swap button, whatever else. They all look the same. They're all essentially the same. So we wanted to like reimagine what a wallet would look like in more of a marketplace environment. So we want to pull the wallet back. It's a key part of the platform, but it's not the first thing you do. When you go to an Amazon or Alibaba or whatever, they don't throw the wallet up as the first thing you see, right? They're showing you product. And so with Stacks Pay and with a more of a marketplace type of interface, we want to pull product and services up in front of the users. So we're reimagining what the wallet is. We decided to use BNS as a first-class citizen. As we onboard users, every user gets a BNS name as soon as they sign in. Now, this is enabled via BNS subdomains. So BNS subdomains allow us to like quickly, easily, cheaply get a name for everybody. We don't have to wait for somebody to get Stacks and then go to a different website and buy a name and then come back and tell us what their name is. And it's not something like in the current wallets where, yeah, you can type in somebody's BNS name as if you want to send them tokens or whatever. Current wallets utilize BNS, but we're making BNS kind of first-class citizen of the platform. Like your BNS is your address. We wanted to make payments, again, super simple. So streamlining the interface down to like a Cash App or a PayPal type of interface where like those are payment-focused applications. We want to make the payment process as simple as that. Scan a QR code, confirm your amount, and click send, and you're done, right? Or your contract is called and your NFT comes, whatever it is, right? And then, like as I mentioned, a marketplace where we're bringing products to the users instead of trying to bring users to all these different products and different websites all over the place. We're trying to bring that together so that we can put products in front of the users and kind of grow the economy that way. And then again, we believe for a long time that the world's a mobile first world these days. I don't think there's any argument about that, but there was a time when doing mobile on Stacks was not widely supported, and you can see that even today by even like Xverse is the one mobile wallet, and even to access websites within it, you have to use their in-app browser to go to websites, which I think is not a great model, right? We should have people be able to throw up a website, and the wallet should be able to just interact with it without having to go inside an in-app browser. So that's our vision. That's where we're going. That's what we're building. In the future, we're going to be obviously increasing decentralization. A lot of the things we're building right now is based on Web 2 to simplify some of the implementation. We're implementing a social platform, which is deeply integrated with the marketplace, but also separate from it. So while it exists as like a communication platform between users and sellers, merchants and consumers, that's not the only thing you could use it for. You can create your own communities, you can create your own private chats, end-to-end encrypted, but still deeply integrated with the marketplace. And then all of this is in the context of further upgrades to SBTC and Nakamoto, where we're going to see SBTC get more decentralized and Nakamoto get better and faster. So, yeah, so like I said, I came from handing out Linux CDs in front of libraries to these days, now we're fighting for open source money, which is based on Bitcoin. That's my story.
Awesome. Awesome. Dan, I just have like a quick question. So if you go like 2 slides back where you were talking about, oh, it's fine. It's fine if you have stopped sharing. So essentially in the wallet, are you thinking of it as like an app store? So when you open your wallet, you can see all the different products which can actually leverage the money that you have in that wallet instead of you having to open like the in-app browser and typing the address and stuff like that.
There's two separate pieces to that. To be honest with you, one is the marketplace. So we want to make it super simple for the everyday person who's not selling products, right? So if you want to sell your car for Bitcoin, we want to be able to make it so that you can list your car, right? If you want to sell an NFT that's in your wallet that you're like, oh, hey, these Megapon apes are now at some threshold. I want to sell mine. You can list your Megapon ape, right from the wallet. And so there's a simple listing kind of marketplace type of thing. But we also have an app platform that we're building out. Obviously, that's way more complex because you're talking about isolating applications from the main wallet, obviously, right? And creating a message passing mechanism so that all of that is secure. That's on the roadmap. So we're looking at kind of two different versions of this thing. The listing piece might end up just being an app and part of the app platform, but right now it's kind of its own standalone piece within the wallet. But yes, the app idea is, and you can see that in our current interface. You can't see it here, but we do actually have our Discover section on the app. Actually, one of the tabs is for applications. One of the tabs is for like news, and the others for community events. So, yeah.
Very nice, very nice. And I just remembered another question, sorry. So if you go back like another slide, so you were talking about just using QR codes to make payments and Bitcoin and unlocking a Bitcoin economy. Essentially, what I've seen is that the maximum impact that I've seen in my experience is when you actually have retailers onboarded. So you have coffee shops, you have maybe some food chains who are accepting payments in crypto. And then you can actually you can just scan the QR code and pay them using your wallet. So is this something that's in your vision, or is this maybe later down the road?
Yeah, absolutely. There's obviously limits to what you can do as like a single company getting started. But what we want to do is with Stacks Pay, what we're hoping for is Stacks Pay creates this environment where we see multiple wallets and multiple POS systems evolve using the same standard. The same way you see on Lightning, there used to be at least like 12, 15 different Lightning wallets. I'm hoping for the same type of thing to happen on Stacks. With Stacks Pay, creating that experience is super easy. And we've had discussions with some people who have talked about like, hey, we think we want to create this hardware platform for a POS system built around this Stacks Pay. That's possible. I mean, I think if you go to a lot of third world countries, a lot of growing economies these days, people have kind of thrown out the whole POS system, right? They're just using their phones. So really what's needed is like software that kind of manages somebody's inventory and then provides these Stacks Pay URLs so that they're easily scannable. So that's totally part of the vision. We can't focus on that right now ourselves. But what we're hoping for is that Stacks Pay becomes a standard, and then we can kind of grow from there out to all the different types of interfaces for creating transactions between users or companies that need to happen.
So Stacks Pay is like a SIP right now. You have like a Stacks improvement. Sorry, Mike, just last question.
Yeah, sorry.
Awesome.
I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
Hey, Dan. Good to see you. I see Frika's here. Are you working with Ryder on any of this? Is that, or do you have plans to? They're building like hardware wallets, aren't they?
Yeah. We had some discussions early on, and we haven't really talked since then about this because they're doing things for like what's the word? Multi-wallet, multi-network transactions as well. And so, yeah, the StacksPay was built to fit inside a larger standard that encompasses multiple networks. So you can identify like this is a StacksPay transaction, and then you know what the format for that transaction needs to be, right? But if you had different, if this is like a Solana transaction, you would have a different format. So I know that they were trying to work on those kinds of things. I'm not really clear where they were. We had some initial visions. They were supportive of StacksPay initially. We haven't talked in a while, to be honest with you.
Okay. One super more quick question, if I can ask, is just about the Xverse problem that you mentioned, and whether or not you've got a solution for that, because that's seems like quite a hard problem.
Oh, I don't, but there is, I think it's SIP 30, and maybe Frigger can correct me if I'm wrong here, that actually talks about creating what the Stacks provider looks like, and that will enable all websites actually to kind of just look for the Stacks provider, whether it's a mobile wallet or it's a an extension or whatever.
Okay. SIP 30. Okay, I'll take a look.
I believe it's SIP 30. Is that right, Frigger? I don't know, Mike, maybe you know. Do you know?
Friedger might be saying something. Friedger, you're on mute, by the way, in case you're adding your thoughts. Dan, by the way, as I was listening to you, I couldn't help but think that what you're saying, that the wallet is being reimagined, sort of turning into something that's not a wallet. A wallet then is you would say like a supporting piece to it, but it seems more of a super app kind of a vision that's evolving, and then sort of adding multiple pieces as it evolves. Would you agree with that?
Technically, yes. Obviously, that whole yes. I mean, I think ultimately, yes. I think it has to be. I think if you see where like WhatsApp's evolving to, if you look at where Facebook's evolving to, you look at things like WeChat that already exist out there, or was it Kakao Talk? Like they incorporate social into wallets into their social experience, right? And it's not just about crypto; it's about just your day-to-day interactions. And that's my last slide. Like money is social, right? So we have to embrace this. And yeah, it is. I hate to say super app, but it is kind of one of those things that takes the social part, and we want to bring people together. But we also want to enable kind of crypto payments via this social app.
That's actually quite interesting. And so, I mean, keeping in line with the concept of keeping things decentralized. Are you also looking at how maybe other folks in the community can also partake in maybe building it together with you guys? Is that something also that can potentially be on the roadmap?
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, for sure. So we're talking with a couple of other groups about things like, including like Frieger, about things like what a smart contract wallet would look like. We're more focused on like a smart contract account that would work within your existing wallet, but like, can we create standards around what smart contract accounts look like and how they interact, right? Rule sets around smart contract accounts. And then even further, we've engaged in a couple of groups about like, what does a message passing platform need to look like, or what does a message passing process need to look like when you're isolating applications separate from like a marketplace or from a wallet, right? You don't want those applications to have the same memory space, just from a security perspective, right? We've talked with different groups about like how those things might be implemented and what they need. It's very early because that's obviously a super complex thing. Like, do we do crap? I'm forgetting what's the I'm blanking on the technology now.
That's okay.
Anyway,
The idea was that, how are other parties potentially getting involved? And as you mentioned, you're already engaging with other folks out there. So it's very exciting. Yeah.
and I think it's more about like creating standards. Again, life, liberty, and the pursuit of open standards. So creating open standards that other folks can implement and use in their own tools.
Yeah, that I think that in itself would be a very powerful idea, something which, if I may use the term super app, but it's not being, let's say, controlled by one central entity. You have it's a base layer, and you can, there are standards through which you can add layers on top and applications around it. I think that can be quite powerful moving
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, I mean, we would like a Lego blocks for like a super app kind of thing is exactly kind of what we'd want to build. We'd want to build like this kind of basic platform and allow people to plug in their own kind of pieces. Um, to that extent, we had looked at, from the social perspective, we looked at Nostr first, because Nostr has a lot of this really, I love Nostr's, um, I love the potential there. It's just not ready yet as a platform, to be honest with you. When I went and looked at some of the Nostr Relay communities, I've told the story a couple of times, but I went to look for the Nostr Relay communities, and the Nostr Relay builders are on Telegram. So I'm like, well, if you're not dogfooding your own thing, you're probably not ready for building a platform on top of, right? So we pivoted. We're basing this on Matrix, which is a well-known, well-tested chat protocol. If I can bring up Frieger again, Frieger actually and I had this discussion a couple of years ago about how the Matrix protocol is really modular and it allows you to do way more than just chat. So this is something that Frieger was telling me 2 years ago, and I wasn't listening properly at the time. And he actually built a Stacks integration with Matrix back then. So we're, trying to make sure that we can create a platform that's uh, fundamental, and then allow plugins and places where you can plug in on top of it as much as possible. To that extent, like even the user accounts, we want to make sure, like if we're creating a user account and we're creating a chat account for you, that you can take that chat account with you and go somewhere else. You don't want to see Stacks anymore. Your chat account is still your chat account. You can take it to another server, change your password, whatever you want, and you never have to see Stacks again. And I say change your password because we're basically creating these accounts on the fly. We're not looking at private keys or anything like that, but we're creating dynamic um, uh, we're creating dynamic passwords for users on the fly for these chat accounts, so that they don't have to worry about even signing into a chat system, but they can if they want.
I have one more question, but I'll see if anybody else would like to go first. All right, I'll go ahead then. So you talked about the BNS system that you guys are implementing, folks being first-class citizens. I was quite intrigued by that, and I would imagine that has something to do with not just identity management, but also reputation management, because the idea is to build a platform where people can actually transact services and products.
Right. And so, I mean, it's yes, but it's part of like one of these things that it's like, do you build something now or do you wait for the community to demand it, right? Because you can definitely see a place where if you're creating a listing and like I bought some, I don't know, pet rocks from Faison, and you never send me my pet rocks. Like there should be a way to like there should be a way for me to let people know that what my experience was, right? And so a reputation system kind of builds out of this. We want to be able to assign BNS names to smart contracts as well, right? So that you can actually have a reputation for a smart contract. That's not implemented yet, but yeah, that's one of those things that kind of has to happen. But it's the question of, do we create it or do we let it evolve, right? And right now we're at the let it evolve part.
That's super interesting, and for me personally, that is a space to look out for, particularly because um, how data related to reputation, particularly, and like how you can sort of take that data anywhere, really, because at the end of the day, that data is not at some, it's not centralized, and what kind of opportunities that creates for all of us. Um, that
Right.
that
And the hard thing is a lot of the data though, this is one of the difficulties is the data that we're putting out there, not just for what we're building on Boom, but for any kind of name system, is kind of attested data, right? Now you might have, there are platforms like Zero Authority that do some basic kind of reputation scores, right? Like, did this person complete the work, and did this person actually pay for the completed work, right? So you get a little bit of a reputation kind of system there, and we could definitely like leverage some of that. But also, if I'm calling myself, you know, Coca-Cola.btc or whatever, am I really Coca-Cola? How do I prove that, right? And the name system with profile data, another thing we're pushing here is kind of an expansion of what the profile data looks like. So this is all volunteered, self-volunteered information. But if you guys, I'm sure you guys have been attacked or people trying to hack you, these like Bloomberg article journalists or whatever, Forbes journalists reaching out to you guys. And like the first thing I do when I see those is like, okay, first I'm I don't believe them by default, but I think most people don't. But you know, the first thing you do is you like look at the Twitter account that it came from. Did it come from this? Okay, they've got 9,000 followers, and they've been around for 6 years or 10 years or whatever. So maybe it's legit. Let me follow. You take the next step, right? And so it's like this. You get to a point somewhere though, where all of a sudden, like, the Twitter account doesn't match the LinkedIn account, doesn't match the company website or whatever, right? And so it's all this kind of web of self-attestation pieces that are in themselves are not like a good source of truth, but maybe put together, it kind of leads you to a version of what might be the truth. That's kind of the difficulty of building some of these things. Is like, if we get into a heavier system where like Blockstack actually used to have a validating social media accounts, used to actually validate social media accounts, but that's a heavier process and it needs to be thought out and decentralized and all this other stuff, right? We're not doing that. We're trying to just expand on profiles and enable people to put more profile information so that other users can make a slightly better informed decision about whether they want to trust these people. And then again, as you mentioned, reputation. What does the reputation system look like? Do we put a rating system? Is it a global smart contract? What does it look like? So,
You know, all very interesting areas to explore, and ties very strongly with the open standards, you know, aspect that you talked about earlier in your talk. So thank you, Dan, so much for taking out the time. Learned a lot from you in this talk, and thank you to everybody as well. I think we're good to maybe wrap this up, unless anybody else wants to add a note or ask a question. All right, Dan, any closing thoughts from your side?
check out boom.money. We're on X at boom_wallet, and I'm at x.com/Dan Trevino. Yeah, I mean, we'd love to talk. We're always open to talking with other projects about how we can work together. So definitely hit us up if you're interested. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome.
This was great.
It's a pleasure having you. All right. Well, take care. Have a wonderful day. And thank you to everybody once again for joining. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.